Hey guys, Coach Keith Keppner here, and in this video we're going to talk about boxing guards and going through, again, like I love to do on this channel, and I know a lot of people enjoy, going through all the nuances, all the details, and again, wrapping it all back to real world application, not talking about fun fantasy football or fantasy boxing type stuff and folklore and mythology and all those other random things. We're talking about stuff that you can actually use if you're a boxer, beginner, intermediate, high level, something that as a coach you can use if you're starting out, or if you're maybe mid-level, expand your knowledge, or high level, a reminder. All right, because I don't act like I have all the answers. I don't have all the answers, and but with this, hopefully, I know for at least one person, which is why I do this, is so at least one person can have a new connection in their mind, a reminder or a revelation, because I want to break through all the noise. There's a lot of noise out there on the internet and out there in general with boxing enthusiasts. And chances are, if you're watching this video, you haven't been around boxing a long time. So I want to get you started off on the right foot. Now, why should you listen to me? Okay, I actually had this comment come up, and that's like absolutely great question. Why should you listen to me? All right. So I was coached by my father, who's a professional boxing coach. All right. He was coached by Chuck Bodak, who worked with over 50 world champions. Okay, so there's a lineage of boxing. All right. Now, what's my boxing experience? I trained boxing I sparred a couple times when I was a little kid, and then I got into it seriously when I was about 17. This is about the time that Forrest Griffin was exploding coming out of Athens, Georgia in the UFC. And I saw that, and I was like, man, I want to get into combat sports. So I went for the Field of Diamonds in my own backyard, which was my father, who actually coached Forrest in boxing, as well as his coaches, Rory and Adam Singer. And initially, I wanted to learn boxing so I could do MMA, because that's what was popular in my mind right there, being 17 years old, in the beginning of 2000. But then I fell in love with boxing. Same time, I got severe Lyme disease, was almost permanently disabled from it, and was trying to box. So I did do a lot of gym wars, a lot of hard sparring. I had a USA boxing fight, only one, lost it on a split decision, and then also sparred two-time national heavyweight champion of Mexico, Elder Hernandez, multiple times when I was in Mexico, and then also got high-level work with a couple different pros in the States. So I've had a lot of re-experience, and then of course, that's just me as a boxer. What have I done as a boxing coach? I've had guys fight on national television multiple times. I've had professional fighters that I built from scratch that are currently undefeated. I've had pro fighters, fight former world champions and do well, lose close decisions, as well as beat some undefeated fighters. And I've also produced Golden Glove champions year after year after year. Okay, so anyway, so that's just me. Why you should listen to me. I'm not trying to say I'm better than anybody else. I'm just telling you what my experience is and why, I at least have some knowledge in this thing called boxing. Okay? Enough of that. Let's move on, guys. All right. So, talking about boxing guards, it's something that with my father, old school, right? He taught basically 90% of what Bodak taught. So, we're talking stuff that was taught from the 20s, 30s, 40s, and then my dad boxed in the 60s in Chicago in the CYO. So, there was no talk of guard. There was talk of defensive maneuvers, boxing stance, and things like that. There was not the conversation about guard. And so that's where it's a newer thing. And I mean, at least in my universe, it's a newer thing. And it's really in the past kind of, I think really 20 years, it's been really honestly like 15. It's really become the topic of conversation, or at least something that I see more and more about. All right. But let's talk about these boxing guards, right? So I'm going to clarify what I like to call them. Just be super nitpicky. But let's so you got like the Philly shell, right? People call it Philly shell, which is so funny too, because if you ask so many fighters, I'll get into it, but the Philly shell is not the Philadelphia shell or whatever the heck. But Georgie Benton, right? We all know, if you literally spent a day on the internet looking up boxing crap, Philly shell, George Benton, inventor of the Philly shell, right? That's what that is. And then you have the cross guard, right? Invented by Archie Moore. And of course, Archie Moore taught the secret to George Foreman. And, it's a very unique guard that very few people do, this, that, and the other thing, right? And it's this magical, mythical force, right? And we don't have all the context behind it, especially people that are new to boxing and also that are fans of boxing, right? I want to help educate, enlighten, remind, or just give a different perspective, right? My perspective. Okay, then peekaboo, right? We all know peekaboo, right? The the awesome style that is the reason why Mike Tyson was heavyweight champion, is the reason, that he had the punching power he did. It was all because of Peekaboo, and he's, that's what made him the fighter he was. Then you have, high guard, right? The secret high guard that Winky Wright employed, and these other fighters do, right? It's a special game changer that if you got to work on all these different guards to do. Okay, now let's look at some classic boxing and let's look for some of these guards. Check out that join option. It's a great way to support the channel. Look at level 2, which will allow you to send me videos of you sparring, you fighting, or you training. And I love to give you my input that can help you get to the next level. All right, guys, great way to support the channel. Now back to the video. All right, so you have Sugar Ray Robinson. He has his left low and his right is, it's really low, but it's about, breast height. But the left is low, the right is up. So is he in a Philly shell right now? George Benton, the inventor of the Philly shell, supposedly, according to online boxing people, some online boxing people, not you, but some online boxing people. Left is low, right is up. That's fine. These guys are like in the same exact stance. One thing too about a great boxing stance, in my opinion, it's kind of an old school idea, is that little bit of concave off to the rear side, like he has. So therefore the head's a little bit off the line. It's a little bit more behind the left shoulder because of it sometimes. And then also when you throw your right hand, your head comes offline. And I find it's also easier to see punches coming because you're just a little bit more out of the way of most things. Joe Louis has the most title defenses of any heavyweight champion in the history of boxing, 25. And shoulder roll on the right hand, left low, right up. Is he Philly rolling? Did he learn that from Georgie Benton, who didn't come till 20 years later or whatever? Did he develop it? I remember seeing on one forum, because I was trying to look into this, because I don't look at forums and stuff like that, but I was trying to look into it and kind of see what's being said out there. Did he learn from some of the gym fighters in Philadelphia, in the 40s, while he was champion in the 30s? The Henry Armstrong, again, same era, 30s. The only guy to hold 3 different weight class titles at the same time, right? After this, they made it illegal. You have to give up another weight class title to go for the other one. And he held 3, and he fought for a 4th, of course, against Seferino Garcia and lost that on a draw. A lot of people thought he won it, so he almost had 4 weight class titles. Now, I know you're like, oh, man, well, that's nothing compared to Manny Pacquiao or just other guys, right? But this is back in the day where there wasn't 20 or 26 or however many weights there are now for titles and everything else. But this is back when there was only 8. Okay, so there was 8. He had almost 4 of the 8. So almost half. Pretty remarkable. Anyway, but look, he has his left low, his right up. So is he Philly rolling as well? Right? Floyd Patterson, the first champion to fight Peekaboo. There's only 3 champions that fought Peekaboo style, and that was Floyd Patterson, Jose Torres, and Mike Tyson. Right? Here is Floyd Patterson. I promise you, this is Floyd Patterson. Left is low, right is up. He's concaved off to the side. Don't get me wrong. He did put the hands up like this when he fought, but he also fought sometimes a little bit like this. All right. So, but he's king of the Peekaboo. So I thought that was the guard that he used. Right. I remember seeing him one. Oh, I'll talk about this other note in a second. All right. What about Joe Frazier? A lot of people say he did a cross guard thing, but here he's doing like a Philly. Well, I guess he's from Philadelphia, right? So that's why he's doing a Philly shell. Or is he just kind of doing standard boxing? Oh, look. So another guy that people say did the cross guard, which, again, I'm not saying he didn't do a cross guard by whatever the definition of a cross guard is, but I'm not even sure of these definitions. Hey guys, taking a quick break to say make sure you stick around for me talking about what is the key to go from guard thinking to the actual type of thinking that you need to do to be more successful than you already are. Here's Ken Norton doing left low, right up. Looks like a Philly. Same thing by Ken Norton. Another picture, just to make sure you know that I didn't just completely cherry pick these pictures. Then look at Roy Jones Jr. I guess he Philly shelled, rolled stuff, whatever. Same thing. Then Tommy Hearns got the left low, right up, trained by, of course, the boxing coach who has trained the most world champions in the history of boxing, Emmanuel Stewart. And he has his right higher than his left and his left lower than his right. And then you have Sugar Ray Robinson in a fight. So it's not just him posing, like I had earlier, but it's him in a fight with his right up, his left low. And he actually does roll punches sometimes. He rolls punches. He at least rolls one right hand with his shoulder in his fight with Jake LaMotta. I think it was the fifth one, right? St. Valentine's Day Massacre, round 13 when he's in that corner. And sure, he eats some of those shots, but he also rolls a right hand and tries to counter back. Then Archie Moore, the king of the cross guard, right? The guy that everyone says is the cross guard king, just like Benton is the shoulder roll king, as far as boxing history goes. So here he is, shoulder rolling a right hand, like we saw in the fights that I did with Marciano. Left low, right is up. Looks like all these guys are doing the same thing. The same thing. Okay. Now, oh look, we got Rocky Marciano in that fight with Archie Moore. I saw this when I reviewed over the fight study. He has his left low, right is up. There's another picture actually of George Benton in this exact same position. Was Rocky Marciano doing the Philly shell? And then you have this Ipo whatever, nonsense. If you like anime, that's fine, no judgment. But they call this, I guess, a cross guard in that cartoon or something. And that's again where a lot of other ridiculous terms that are not boxing terms that you hear in, I would argue, real boxing, or at least old school boxing. I don't know what people do nowadays, but talk about the Dempsey drop step and the Dempsey roll and cross guard, right? All this stuff. Some of it maybe comes from this anime cartoon, which is not real boxing. And if this is a cross guard, ooh, I don't know. And then here you have Miguel Cotto, all right? So you have Miguel Cotto, very good boxer that I like a lot, and I was really into when I started boxing. Here he is. As we know, he fought with a more hands-up style, and some people would call that a high guard, right? But then here he is with his left low and his right up. What? Wait, so he just must have been one of those only guys that he just he was able to magically, mystically blend all these different guards together, right? I saw this one video talking about Dwight Muhammad Quayi, and it was a study of his defense or whatever, and it was talking about how unusual it was that he blended all these different guards together. But again, I want to make the case in point for how that's not unusual and how you don't need to look at it in the way of guards, all right? And then here is, if you do, so this brings me to this point. So here's Joe Louis against Whoopsie Daisy. Joe Louis against Mr. Max Baer, all right? Joe, of course, is like at his peak form right here. But what's going to happen to you, in my opinion, or happen to too many people, because I'm not going to say for sure, right? You might be, the percentile that you're able to do the cross guard solely and have success, or be Philly shelling it or whatever, or peekaboo in it or high guarding it, and you're just like, you think in terms of guards perfectly and to have success, right? So you might be that extra special person. But in general, what I notice when people think in terms of guards in boxing, all right, of these couple basic guards that I listed, as well as whatever other random guards you can look up, the X guard, the Z guard, I don't know, just whatever random stuff you can think of, Emmanuel Augustus guard. This is what's going to happen to you sometimes, or too often, or I'm afraid, and I don't want it to happen because I'm a good coach and I care about people. So you're going to do what Max Baer does here, where he goes to a Philly shell, quote unquote, right? Left low, right is up. Good boxer, high level boxer. There we go. So would you agree that right now Max Baer is in a Philly shell, right? Again, funny. It's in the 30s, right? It's before George Benton. So did Max Baer invent it? So anyway, what does Joe do? Joe does what is available. Things are available, right? So he goes, ooh, beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful right hook for the body. Then what does he do again after that? He comes around, tries to come around that left hook up top. All right. And then what does Bayer do? Because he's panicking, he's having a lot of trouble. So as he reverts to kind of going into, oh, look at that. So where is he now, guys? Where is he now in the boxing lore of the internet? He's in a cross guard, right? He's in the Archie Moore cross guard. I guess he taught Archie Moore how to do this, right? Or maybe he taught George Foreman how to do this too. All right, so now he's in this position. So now what does a great fighter like Joe Louis do? Boom, takes the liver. Right? Now you could say, oh, well, the hand wasn't around enough or whatever. Well, hey, it's generally going to be available. That's what's going to happen to too many people if you think in terms of guard. You'll go Philly, someone will exploit your Philly. You'll go cross guard, someone will exploit your cross guard. Then you'll go high guard, they'll exploit your high guard. And you're just like hitting controls on a freaking, on a game, just mashing buttons. I think like someone said spamming buttons. And then Max goes out here to try to post them, and Lewis brushes the post, rips them. I love Lewis's little thing he does there with the little, fist. He's like, yeah. Hey guys, taking a quick break to say, make sure you click like, subscribe, comment below, let me your thoughts, and share this with someone that you think might benefit from it. Now, back to the video. So, I don't want that to happen to you, all right? So, where does all this guard talk come from, right? It says it comes from the internet, but where did it come from? How did it get there? How did it get there? Right. Well, I think too many people talking about boxing that just watch boxing and don't either do boxing or coach boxing or both. Okay. Or haven't done much of it or enough of it, maybe to understand, because some of the stuff you can I've seen people have it make sense for the first 3 months of boxing, 6 months, even a year of boxing. I've seen them have it make sense. Or maybe if they're only just gym warriors, right? But the second you go out there in competition and start going against elite guys, the picture changes and you start having trouble with things. And then you start realizing like, man, I need to not think so much like this, right? And I want to avoid this for you if you haven't run into this already. So where does it come from? Again, through my research of trying to find the history of where the whole guard ideas come from in boxing. Because again, this is not talked about in the old school. And not to say everything old school is better, right? There's a lot of new things or things that have become more common now that are fine and great. But I think it comes from fighting video games, right? It comes from those great games like Fight Night and stuff like that, which are super fun games. They're awesome. I was really impressed. Like I mentioned in another video, when I played one of them against one of my pro fighters in the hotel the day before he had his fight. I was impressed, man. It was good stuff. But I think that led to some of this thinking, right? Because it's like, oh, this fighter has the Philly shell and the cross guard, and it gave these names to things, which are just kind of corny names, and they're also thinking too much in a box, right? It's not thinking in a diverse way. It's thinking about very just black and white. You're going to do this guard and this guard, this guard. Why? Because you got your buttons, and you can't hit a button or hit enough buttons. You can't have enough buttons on a controller to hit all the nuances that do occur with boxing, slight ranges, slight different hand positions that occur, and things like that you do reactively with punches. Also, I would argue, I mean, I don't know. I don't play Fight Night at a high level. I played Fight Night when I played it once at the lowest level possible, probably. But I don't honestly think you can react in the same way to punches that a high level boxer can react, right? With that ability to almost feel what's going to come and deflect punches in the just the inches that a good fighter can do it. Okay. Now, also, where does it come from? I think is a little bit from martial arts. All right, but it comes from martial arts in the ways that apply the least. What I mean by this, jiu-jitsu. So, for instance, jiu-jitsu, excellent martial art, top martial art, wonderful. I'm not a jiu-jitsu expert by any means, shape, or form. So, forgive me if I say anything like completely wrong. I have plenty of friends, including my wife, that competed in jiu-jitsu as well as fought MMA, Muay Thai, kickboxing, and boxing. So I have some ideas of these things, okay? With something like jiu-jitsu, guards make sense. Why do guards make sense? Because let's say you're in someone's guard, right? Whatever that would be, just basic guard. You have to do certain things to get to like side mount or side guard or whatever it would be called to progressively work yourself, from A, B, C, D oftentimes. Not that you can't ever jump, right, from one thing to another thing in jiu-jitsu, but it's very much, you're limited by the body and things like that. It's not like boxing where you can literally go from like this position, right, if you were to apply it to boxing, which is, a relatively safe basic position, right, in someone's guard, to like all of a sudden like guillotine, boom, or like armbar, bam. Like, there's you can try to jump that, but from what people tell me, that's like the dumbest thing you ever do. But in boxing, you could be at like a zero position where you both have your hands up and you're both just whatever, and then someone just steps in with a really nice, quick, beautiful shot and knocks you the hell out. And so that's where, things like jiu-jitsu, I think it is beneficial to work things from certain guards, of course. I mean, that makes total sense to me. But as far as boxing, thinking about I'm going to like work on these different guards, I think is the wrong way to look at it. I'm going to tell you, in my opinion, what a better way to look at it is. So let me tell you about Philly Shell Gavin versus Orthodox Tay. All right, I say I didn't put a space there between Orthodox and Tay. All right, so Philly Shell Gavin and Orthodox Tay. All right, both guys I took from zero to competing. Okay? Philly Shell Gavin always had a habit when things got a little bit hot in sparring, he would drop his lead hand right up and try to Philly shell, rely on that specific position. Okay? Orthodox Tay just had his hands in basic position. They weren't super high, they weren't super low. And when he got in trouble, he kept that position. When he was being aggressive, he kept that position. And he did that throughout the majority of the time he was an amateur. Now he's an undefeated pro fighter. Okay? Philly Shell Gavin, first fight, gets nailed by some right hands. And he can't do much about it. And because his default that he was building is to go like this. So if someone has an answer for the hole, like we saw Joe Louis have an answer by the right hook to the body or the right hand over the top. If someone has an answer for that hole and that's your default, I'm going to argue that that's the worst default to go to stance-wise, position-wise, than just an orthodox standard boxing position. Okay? Now, a better name for, or a better way to look at guards, in my personal opinion, is looks. It's just different looks. You're giving someone different looks. It's not different guards, it's different looks. All right? And to me, that's a big difference, right? So you're giving someone a certain look to therefore present something. You're presenting a picture to them that has purpose to it. There's not only a defensive purpose, but it's also a offensive and quote unquote setting traps purpose. Okay? So let's talk about these different looks, because that's also a term, as you guys know that are in boxing gyms that actually box. People talk about giving people different looks. They don't talk about, oh, yo, do this guard, do that guard often. I mean, I'm sure somewhere, somehow, this is, and I'm sure I'm going to hear in the comments that so-and-so talks like that or their coach talks like that. Cool, whatever. And that doesn't make you automatically bad. I'm not saying that either. But I'm saying I believe personally it's a much better way to approach it is with looks. All right. So going here, let's talk about the lead arm down look, right? So having your lead down, right? That's all you got to say. You don't need to say, Philly shell, this, that, and the other thing. Just having your lead arm down. What's the advantage of this look? Okay, so one thing is you think about vision-wise, if your lead is more down, which is honestly like almost a standard boxing stance, if the lead hand was up about 2 or 3 inches, right, then you're like talking almost basic, perfect, standard boxing stance, okay? That's number one. Number two, though, what's the benefit of the lead being down? Well, lead being down is going to provide you more vision, right? Because if that lead hand is too far up, I've seen people pay the price for it. It's hard to see what the right's doing, what the right hand's doing. If it's coming around, anything, it's interfering with your vision. So that's one thing. Also, if it's not quite as far as Holyfield has it, or even if it is where Holyfield has it right now, you can also, I like my guys to train to pop it up super fast. So they're down in that lower position, being able to just boom, pop it up super fast. Because at the end of the day, in a lot of ways, it doesn't matter where the hell you hold your hands, like Chuck Bodak would say, as long as you get them up to block when you need to, right? That's all that matters. All right. So it's going to provide you better vision. It's also going to provide a different pathway for that jab, right? So that jab is going to be coming up from the bottom, a little harder to see, a little different angle. Also, that jab could turn into a hook, and it's hard for people to tell. And then also, when that left is low, what does that invite? That invites right hands. So therefore, you can utilize rolling the punch with your lead shoulder, countering, etc., or maybe even catching them with the hook. But so you're inviting certain things while also making things more available to you. All right. So that's just the basis of it. There's a lot more we can talk about with the lead arm down, but that's just some of the basics of it. Okay. And also, frankly, too, man, your left arm gets tired, you can learn how to box with it down a little bit. And if you know how to do it right, you'll be fine. Just don't make it your only default. And it wasn't Holyfield's only default. He had many looks like every single freaking decent fighter has. All right, hands high. All right, here we got Mayweather, right? So famous for the Philly shell. But anyway, so the look of hands high, right? So what's the advantage of that? Well, it could be, as far as inviting punches, you're inviting body shots, you're inviting a straight shot up the middle, right? That you're going to pull out of or counter. With this position here as well, you also are going to be able to deliver a faster lead right hand, because the right hand is closer, you're a little bit square with it typically. And also, honestly, that left hook could be faster as well. All right. So it's a position that you're looking to set things up off of. Okay. Now, hands on the cheeks, right? So here we have Manny Pacquiao with the hands on the cheeks. You know, I could have picked Mike Tyson with hands on the cheek, but I picked Manny Pacquiao, hands on the cheeks. What's the advantage of this? Your vision is going to be a little bit better, because one of the downsides, going back to the high guard, one of the downsides of the high guard is, it's more of like kind of a little bit, it depends on the ranges, but it can be hard to see how the hooks are going to come, right? It can be hard to see things on the peripheral, right? Versus this position, with those elbows in, you're protecting the body reasonably so. You're protecting the soft tissues of the face reasonably so. And your vision is a little bit more preserved. So, as more of a little bit of a default, I do like this position. It's just kind of like something that you can fall into more often. If you tend to fall into high guard all the time, that's probably one of the ones that I least like. Okay, but this position, it's hands about cheek height, so we're protecting more of the soft tissues. You can pop it up if you need to stop something higher. You can see things clearly. You can shoot shots right off that very easily, and the elbows are in, right? So you're not necessarily inviting a lot of shots, but one thing as well that's super beneficial about this position is that when you get on the inside, I like for my guys sometimes to have this, right? Now you can get on the inside and kind of be more with the lead low and things like that, put the shoulder into them and do your work off of that. Absolutely 100%. But having this of the hands a little bit closer as you're coming in, it's going to make it harder for guys to tie you up if you can keep this position, throw those punches and keep this position. And so it's a great way to eliminate tie-ups, kind of tying on to my video talking about getting tied up. Versus the more the hands are out, the more it is easier to get tied up. And also you can deliver very nice short punches from this position, just like this. Almost all short punches right from this position. So that's an advantage of it too that I like a lot. Hands down. Here we got Roy Jones against Andy Ruiz. No, was it Andy Ruiz? Yeah, last name Ruiz. He had the same name as the current guy. I can't remember. John Ruiz, excuse me. John Ruiz. Yes, thank you, memory. uh, so obviously Jones, very famous for having the hands down. And what's the advantage of that? Well, uh, defensively, that it's going to be relatively hard to get those hands up to block shots. So you do have to keep that in mind. Not that you couldn't, you definitely could, but you're going to be relying more on head movement, feet, and your shoulders, both shoulders, to deflect punches. Okay, but off of this position, you're obviously very, very, very much baiting punches. Okay, so your hands are down, and your opponent most of the time is going to know it that you're looking to bait a shot. And there's an advantage of shooting shots from down there, okay, to just provide this look. Because I remember one of my dad's heavyweights that he was training. really big guy, 280 pounds. I was throwing punches at him and working his defense for my dad. And I was throwing every punch as hard as I could and as fast as I could, too. And man, this guy was blocking and defending every single shot that I was trying to bomb him with. It was funny though, because the second I just did this, I put my hands down, right? Obviously, I wouldn't do that if I was actually sparring this dude. He's like freaking 300 pounds. But anyway, the second I put my hands down like this, I start throwing punches. I was literally hitting him with almost every single punch that I threw at him because it was coming from a different place. It was hard to see, and that can be a game changer and a good nuance to throw into your game, into your toolbox. All right. Now, really, at the end of the day, the problem with guards comes down to this. When we think about guards, we think about static versus dynamic defense. What do I mean by that? Static defense, meaning that I'm going to lock into a position to be defensive, versus I'm going to be able to just react to the specific punches that I'm aware of or think are coming and do that economically. Okay? It's too much of a newbie thing, a green thing, or just a lack of defense thing where it's like, I'm just going to go hands up, because plenty of times you see fighters at a decent level go hands up, or even a lower level, hands up, and their opponent does the work to come around, right? To find the openings and create the openings. So it goes for all these things. If we do cross guard, and you're thinking, I'm going to go cross guard, then automatically, in my opinion, you're mentally saying, I'm going to also leave open everything that's open. And let's face it, in the standard boxing stance, there's probably the least general openings and the most offensive opportunities that you could have in general. And that's why it's a standard boxing stance. Okay. So static versus dynamic. You're not going to lock into, like in jiu-jitsu, where you're going to have like a standard guard position with your legs wrapped around somebody. You're not going to be able to do that with a stance in boxing, with the way you hold your hands, because everything moves so fast too, right? I can go from here to here to here and just right away, like, whatever. And that's how you got to be moving dynamically based off of what's coming. Every single fighter you see, whether it's Winky right up here to, like I talked about, Miguel Cotto, Joe Louis. I mean, gosh, I'm almost losing all the memory of it because it's everybody. Guys I mentioned, Evander Holyfield, whoever. You see them literally go between all of these things because they're thinking dynamically of defending punches. They're not necessarily thinking about, I'm going to hit these different stances or these different guards. Okay? Let's talk about stance basics as it applies to like the arms and things like that, because that's where you have this conversation of guard, right? And people say these different guards, they're not talking about different foot positions necessarily at all. They're talking about different places that your hands are and how your torso is typically. Okay. So I picked this one, Emil Griffith, okay, middleweight champion. And let's talk about stance based off of Emil Griffith. So he has the right hand a little bit on the side of the face and a little bit up front. Okay. Good standard classic boxing position. You could say it could be a little bit higher. That's okay. Talking an inch, could be an inch up, right? Also could be fine right where he's at. Chin is relatively down, could be down a little bit more, but we're looking good. Because why can the lead be lower than the right typically? Well, because the lead's going to do most of the offensive work. The rear's going to do most of the defensive work, right? So you want to have that a little bit more there to protect you, right? You want to have it up front sometimes. Like Emanuel Stewart, again, coached the most world champions out of any coach in the history of boxing, so it's going to be very hard to disagree with him. I'm not going to disagree with him. He likes coach people generally to have that hand in front. Absolutely, because those straight shots are becoming the fastest, and you can see that hook coming around. All right? Classic, basic stuff. Also, too, it helps speed up the right hand a little bit, too. Now, again, like I said, lead's a little bit low. His torso is sided up, so therefore, there's theoretically from a position that's just not overly compromised, you are eliminating as much of your torso to be hit as possible. The lead shoulder is more up front, so therefore it can interfere more with punches, utilized for rolling punches with your lead shoulder. And that jab also has the most range on it that it can. And then as well, think about it, orthodox versus orthodox, right? Why can you have your lead hand low and get away with it a lot? Because the hand that you might have to defend against with that lead hand is the right hand, like a right hook or a straight right hand perhaps, but you can catch straight right hand with the rear hand. But anyway, so a right hand shot, that's going to take the most time. All right. The fastest shot is going to be the lead hand shot, which would be the left hand. Against, again, if you're boxing an orthodox fighter and you're orthodox or same stance, whatever. And so that's the 1 and the 3, right? Things like that are going to be a lot of trouble because they're so quick, because they're closer to you, all right? And so that's just some of the nuances of the design of this stance that is just a basic boxing stance. But again, you don't need to be thinking about these different guard positions. Just know how to defend the punches, know all the options for defending punches, and train those options. And then naturally, you might give people different looks to invite different things so you can exploit different counters. All right. You notice now I didn't talk about the cross guard because to me that's just a slight modification of the what people call the Philly shell, which is very close to a standard boxing stance. Okay. With that cross guard, the elbow comes up a little bit, and your left hand is around where the liver is. Okay. If you're orthodox, that elbow popping up, like absolutely, dude. Someone can run their hand right into that elbow. That's going to be a hell of a time for them. And it's a good oh crap position, right? And if you watch, Archie Moore, guys like that, a lot of times they're here, basic boxing stuff with lead hand low, rear hand doing a lot of the work. And then sometimes from here, they just pop that up to stop the shot. That's called a defensive maneuver. That's not a guard, in my opinion. Okay, again, you can say I'm nitpicking, right? Feel free to comment below, say I'm nitpicking, okay? All love. Now, man, I know I've sparred a lot of Muay Thai guys that they're really good because they're more up here because they're looking to get clinches. Man, they're good at popping those elbows in the way of jabs. Man, that's a hell of a shot to have to hit or to hit with your hand, man. Damn. You're trying to hit someone hard with a jab or right hand and they put the elbow right in the way. Sure, theoretically they're opening up their body, but oh my gosh, it hurts. It makes you think twice about throwing the punch, right? So those are, some of those little nuanced advantages to some other forms of defense. But or like, brushing a punch to bring someone off balance, which you can accomplish by having the hands out farther. The more the hands are out far, the more you can, brush shots. Some people call that parry, but whatever, brush shots. And it throws people off balance, wears their arms out. But it also has downsides because it's a little bit more committal. And, I find newer people have more trouble with it and they get nailed a little bit more, especially if that's the default. All right. So again, to wrap up, these are just my philosophies. I hope they benefited you in some way, or at least one person watching this, or maybe reminded you of a concept that you heard a long time ago, or gave you a new one, or just a new perspective on one that you already know. All right. Or maybe another way to say it, hopefully. And again, this is all done out of love and respect and in my own humble experiences and opinion. And I really appreciate all the love and support on this channel, guys. Make sure you comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear them. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And I just really appreciate your support. I'll see you on the next video.